Welcome to Shedding the Shame. I'm your host, Tammy Wong. This is where women stop whispering about the hard things. No performing, no fixing, no pretending we're fine. Just honest conversations about what we've carried, what it cost us, and how we rebuilt. You don't need a perfect story. You just need the courage to tell the truth. You are not broken. You are not dramatic. And you are not alone. Let's shed the shame. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Shedding the Shame. I am here today with Kelly McKenzie. And after 6 years of marriage, her husband died from complications of Crohn's disease, leaving her to parent their 16-month-old and 3-year-old daughter alone. Horrified family and friends showered the 40-year-old with sympathy. However, rather than feeling comforted, she felt somewhat less than. As her daughter entered preschool, things only worsened. It was as if being a single parent was something shameful. A humor writer, Kelly's always avoided sharing this part of her life, but now 30 years on, she's finally ready. Thank you, Kelly, for being here. I'm so excited to hear your story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And we know each other a little bit. We're in a PR club together, but we've never met in person, right? So I didn't really know this part of your story. I knew another part of your story. So when you reached out, I was really grateful for you to be vulnerable in this and to share because, yeah, widowhood, I don't think is really talked about much at all. So, as we start, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am a mom now of a 32-year-old and a 30-year-old, which is just absolutely shocking how fast they grow. You
Yeah.
know that they say the first year is slow and then everything speeds up, and it's true. Also, I am a writer. I blog. I started blogging, and then that led to a book, and I wrote about the 10 years that I changed working with my type A mom in her Asian antique store in Vancouver. And so now I'm working on a manuscript, delving into fiction for the first time, which I've always done memoir, and fiction is a whole other ball of wax. It's like learning Italian when all you know is buona suerte or whatever. So this is all new to me, and I'm just starting to dig into that, and it's exciting.
That is really exciting. I'm excited to read it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And why did you feel called to share your story on the podcast?
The kindness. I think I was really impacted by your presentation, your first introduction, and your goals about shedding the shame and just I think we in today's lovely tumultuous world, we need more kindness. And I think and the positivity too really rang true with me. And I just felt called, and I just immediately reached out, and it just felt right for the time for me, and also the time for today's world. I think you're bang on. Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that. That makes me feel really happy. Because yeah, I mean, you have an idea in your brain of like, I think this would be really good. But then, I've done other things where it's like nobody really responds. And this one, a lot of women have responded. And so I was like, okay, there
Oh,
was some method to my madness on
wonderful.
this.
That's wonderful.
Thank
That's
you.
super. Really great to hear.
Thank you. Okay, well, trigger warning for anyone listening. We are going to be talking about widowhood and about, you know, husbands passing away. And so if this is something that you are not ready to receive or is triggering for you, please switch off. So could you share a little bit about your husband's passing and the aftermath of that for you?
Sure, sure. So my husband passed away from complications of Crohn's disease, and he was 38. Had many, many surgeries, was diagnosed at 15 and had many, many surgeries. Really positive guy. Nobody, except in his close circle, really knew how ill he was. And the last surgery, he just never recovered from the last surgery. It was a real roller coaster. Got better, got worse, was in a hospital for 3 months. Better, worse, better, worse. But I never thought in my heart of hearts that he'd die. And then, so when he did, it was like, poof, I was just blown out of the water. I'd never thought that he would actually die from it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
And
especially at that age, I mean,
yeah,
it's
38.
something you expect.
Absolutely not. I would, in his defense, I think he would say at 15, he didn't, when he was diagnosed, he didn't think he probably would get married and have kids. So he would probably say, I was really blessed to make it to 38, but when you're on the other side and you're the widow, yeah, it was tough. It was
Absolutely.
tough. And then the aftermath, my immediate reaction was I felt, okay, I have these two kids and I cannot allow them to be defined by the early death of their dad, because I know that would be, he would smote me. He would come down and he would, his biggest thing was, ensure that he was a positive guy and ensure he lived his life to the fullest. And I knew that he would want his kids to as well. So that was my immediate focus. I was not prepared for the sympathy. I was not prepared for the immediate transition into single motherhood. Those two things come in and hit me sideways.
Yeah. And I think there's no way to prepare for single motherhood. I mean, as someone whose husband is very much alive but travels a lot, even when he's gone for a week or two in a row, it's so hard, and to think about that being your new reality forever is a huge thing to wrap your head around.
So when your kids are so little, everyone is so empathetic. You're so they don't know how to react other than envelop you in sympathy.
Yeah.
And maybe when your kids are older, it's different. But for me, that's what I found so difficult, especially at first, because it's like you're lesser than. You're no longer on their level. They don't see you as you. You're now this completely different person who needs to be coddled, who needs help, who needs. It's different. That's the hardest. Was what I found really hard was that I was no longer me. I was no longer Kelly. I was the single mother of these tiny little kids. How is she going to cope? We need to help. You know.
Yeah. So did it feel like, yeah, you were kind of being, handled with like little kid gloves, almost like you were like you were broken.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Which is hard when you're a very capable, very strong woman. And of course, something like that would be devastating, but it doesn't change who you are at your core either, right? And what you're capable of. But
And
yeah,
it's just one more, it's a thing to deal with that you don't need at that time
right.
because you're exhausted and my focus was on my kids. Then to
Hmm.
also have to feel that. So I was very blessed. I was invited down to New Zealand and to stay in 6 weeks in New Zealand with a very dear friend and her family.
Amazing.
So the three of us went down there and we literally slotted into their family life and did everything with them. Her kids were 5 to 12 at the time. She had 4 kids. And honestly, that was a godsend because she asked me right off, do you want to talk about your husband? She met him. She loved him. And I said, can we just be normal? And she said, is it okay if I talk about my husband? I'm like, yes, I want to hear it all. Please treat me like normal.
Yeah.
I'm still me. And it's so to have the 6 weeks down there with them and meet all their friends and just slot into their family life and go to all the games and the sports was wonderful. And I came back feeling so much stronger and more like me. And then we entered preschool, which was a whole other thing altogether.
Well, what a beautiful gift that your friend gave you, not only to have an escape almost of, how people were treating you here, but also to ask you how you wanted to be talked to and treated. That's
Absolutely.
so important. And that's just like the mark of a really good friend that knows you very well,
Absolutely.
to have the depth and the, emotional intelligence to approach the situation that way. I think that's something when there's a death, especially if it's an unexpected death, that's something that throws a lot of people is like, I don't want to just talk about this because I think about it every second of the day. And when I'm with my friends, I want to break from that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So besides that person, that friend who was wonderful, how do you wish people would have treated you? in the kind of direct aftermath of it? Like what would have been helpful?
That's a really great question. Looking back, and I try to remember this when I have friends who have family members pass, ask not just how are you, but are you comfortable talking about how you feel? And give them, the person, onus to say whether or not they're happy to talk about how they are. It's I found it really difficult when people would ignore it and not talk to me about it. Or it was also hard when my daughter started preschool and I knew no one.
Mm-hmm.
She knew no one and brand new. And I would, it was all couples and me. And I would say, they'd look around for my husband and, oh, my husband passed away in January. And it was the conversation would just stop. And if somebody had just said, I'm so sorry. How are you, are you comfortable in talking about him? Are you comfortable in talking about how it happened? And then it was on me to say whether I wanted to shut down the conversation. That would have been really helpful, because I was really felt this shame, like, oh, I'm the only one here who is single. I am, this single mother who is, it was really tough meeting all those new, 18 couples. And that was a hard time. So I think it's a really great question. Ask the person if they're comfortable. And, if they start to cry, and just a simple, like a gentle hug or something, and then you move on if they don't want to talk about it. But bring it up. It's really difficult. It makes it worse if you just ignore it, I found.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Just, yeah, give the person the choice if they want to talk about it or not, but don't act like the person never existed.
Exactly.
Or make it about, I think it's more about the people that you were speaking to and their level of comfort versus
Yes.
yours, and worrying about saying the wrong thing, or that, yeah, you wouldn't be comfortable. But I think there's a lot of assumptions that people make that
Mm-hmm.
are such missed opportunities at connection with other people.
Exactly.
And that could have, if they had been willing to just ask one question, could have been such a connection point for you. And as somebody who has young daughters still, mine are 6 and 9, like I remember the kindergarten drop off, the preschool drop off very well. And yeah, I
Yeah.
can imagine, yeah, with all of those sets of parents. And when, my husband travels a lot, so I'm generally taking the kids to school most weeks and picking them up. And it would be really challenging to be confronted with that every day and reminded of that every day and have other people ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it was a parent participation preschool time. So you were spending at least 2 days a week for 4 hours with these people,
Oh,
rather
wow.
than just the drop off and yeah. So once she got into kindergarten, it was drop off, but for preschool, it was age 3 and 4. You dropped off. You were with them for like 4 hours, and that was,
Okay.
sitting there in the shame of. I still remember those first couple of months, the first few months when no one knew me. That was hard. And I would, the worst though, this was delightful, was going to orientation. So you would go in with your child who was starting in the age 3 group in September. So you'd go in, I don't know, it was June or something, with another little one who also didn't know, but they were also joining in September. And the
Mhm.
mother pulled her daughter aside. So her daughter would be with my daughter in September. She pulled her daughter aside, and I heard her say, "Don't talk about fathers. Don't talk about your father." And and then my daughter looked at me, because we talked about her dad all the time. And my daughter looked at me and like, what? So I had to come from my daughter first. That was the important thing. And I just,
Mhm.
explained that perhaps this little girl had never met someone whose daddy had died.
Yeah.
And then I talked to the mom and the daughter, and they said, "Oh, we talk about him all the time, all the time. Happy to share and love to hear about your stories." And so I did. My heart went out to that mom too, because she had no idea,
Mhm.
and I understood how she felt. It rocked her world to find out that here I was again with in that situation. That's another thing that you're slammed with these comments that you're not expecting, and that carried on. It carried on for a long time.
Yeah, and people have good intentions, I'm sure. This mom
Mhm.
had good intentions and thought she
Exactly.
was protecting your daughter, protecting
Yes.
you. But it's also what a huge burden to put on her daughter to like forbid her
Yes.
from talking about
Yeah.
something
Exactly.
to her classmate and friend.
Mm.
And I think, I'm sure she never thought about that angle or that wasn't her intention, but good for you for also just saying, hey, no, we want to
Yeah.
talk about him
Yeah.
and giving your daughter their permission to talk about him because, I'm sure there are families where a parent dies and the other parent does not want to talk about them. And that could be really hard for the child to
Yeah.
deny that existence. So I think that probably meant a lot to your kids at the time. And then as they've grown, that you have shared and talked
Hmm.
about him and kept that healthy line of communication open.
To that point, I found it really important to talk about the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than raise him as some sort of angel that existed on this earth. And I mean, he had his faults and could be quite quirky. And so we talk about that too.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love is now my kids are adults and they will bring up things that I've forgotten.
Oh,
And
cool.
I love that. So you never know what they will remember.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's grand. It's great. And so I am glad that I kept doing that. And
Yeah.
that was really important to me at the time. And I'm really glad that I carried through with that.
So once you got back from New Zealand from that
Yes.
6 weeks and got back to your normal life, how did you get through that time? How long did it take you to feel like you kind of got your bearings and, got used to your new normal?
Yeah, that's another great question too. It was a long time. The first year is dreadful
Mhm.
because as everyone who who knows, there's all these firsts, and so you have a year full of firsts without your spouse, and that's really hard. I found that really hard. So the first year was tough, and then to throw that in the mix, starting this new preschool, which is full on, absolutely full on with all these people, and then they have all these socials with the couples, and all the couples are there, and you're by yourself. Um, so that was tough. My sister was great; she stepped in. I had a very dear friend. Actually, he flew for Air New Zealand, and we share a goddaughter in New Zealand. So he flew up like once a year, and he would sort of come to these socials with me, and that was really helpful. He understood. I would say got the first year behind me, which was great, but you're still with every new situation, new social situation that you're in with your kids, then you're slammed again. There really wasn't it takes a long time. You think you're stable. You think, okay, got all in control, everything's going great, and then you'd be slammed again. For example, my kids, I made the mistake of really overscheduling them. I thought, okay, got year one under belt. Now we're going to start doing things that dad would want you to do. Dad would want you to know how to ski. Dad would want you to know how to swim. Dad would want you to know how to play soccer. Dad would want you in lacrosse. And it was awful. We had one situation where I had a little wake up call. We were driving from swimming to skating after school. So snacks in the car. Then we go to skating, and then we're going to swimming. And I was hurling cheese sandwiches wrapped in wax paper for dinner over the back seat, bonking them on the forehead. And they're like, "Mom," that was one of the wake up calls for me, that perhaps we need to slow down, that we cannot do everything Dad did. But the biggest wake up call, I would say, that really I think changed everything for me, and I started to realize, okay, we gotta pull out of this. My son played soccer in the morning on Saturday. It was one of those bitterly cold days, and another mom said to me, "Henry, Kelly, your son is crying." Had been in goal. And I was so cognitive of not being that mom who would run out and mollycoddle my son. So I stood back, and I'm going, okay, well, the coach is with him. Coach is giving him a hug, and da 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 da. Turns out the coach's father booted him in the face with the ball, just by mistake, was
Yeah.
from midfield, booting it back to him in goal. Fine. We get in the car. We're whipping up to Cyprus to go cross country skiing, because of course you got to go cross country skiing right after soccer. So we're in the car. They go skiing, and we're coming home. And I hear from the back seat, "Ma'am, is it normal for your face to be numb?" And I turned around, and there's my little guy. Little eyes are shut, and his cheek is all swollen from the ball. And I pulled over the side of the car, and I burst into tears. And it was awful. And that's when everything changed. And that's when I realized, okay, let's get a grip here, Mom. Slow down, take ask your kids what they would like to participate in, and let's just carry on, and that was the big wake-up call for me.
Yeah. So then what changes did you make going forward from that time?
I just pulled everything off, and we focused. I just said, "What do you want? What would you like to do?" And they said, "Could we try swimming?" And it was my daughter who said that. My son, 2 years younger, could float, but that was it. So we joined a summer swim club, and that was the turning point. We did summer swimming, and every summer they swam from age 6 up to 16, and then they lifeguarding and coaching. Yeah. So
Nice.
for me, I put the onus on them instead of trying to be both mom and dad.
Yeah.
I just said I put the onus on them and asked them what they wanted to do, and we went from there.
Off yourself, right? To try to figure out what they wanted
Exactly.
and
Yes.
make their life perfect. I think all moms have that, and I'm sure especially when you lose a spouse, that goes into like hyperdrive of I have to make my kids' lives perfect, and I don't want
Mhm.
them to suffer in anything, and they're already dealing with this. Yeah, at that I could totally see how you would just naturally do and
Awesome.
kind of lean into. You mentioned earlier your sister helping out and a friend from New Zealand flying up and helping out with the kids. Who else, were there other people that showed up for you during that time? And, how did they help that was the best for you? Like, what did they do that was the most helpful?
See, the ones that were most helpful, going back to the previous conversation, were the ones who would let me talk about my husband. Basically, I just wanted to do that, and just to sit and have coffee, just to sit and have tea, or go out, have a glass of wine. I mean, that was the best too. And also the ones who opened up about their husbands and treated me like a normal person and bitched about their husbands doing whatever. Like,
Yeah.
please carry on. Tell me all that stuff. I am still me. I still get what it's like. You're not married to a perfect guy. No one is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved all that when they treated me, the ones who treated me normally, who got me. And it took the ones who knew me really well were treated me like that. The ones that I met, it took a while, and it took them getting to know me and my sense of humor. And I worked really hard at, encouraging that. And that really helped once people started treating me normally and asking about my husband and hearing about him and telling me about their husbands and that sort of thing. That's when it all started to come together. But then again, you are blindsided again. I remember this one dad at swimming. I thought everything was grand and everybody knew me and no problem. And I think my kid had been swimming for like 3-4 years. And he said to me, "Oh, so your husband isn't fond of seeing the kids swim?" So you're slammed. You think you have it all, and then it all comes rolling back. Like that whole shame of I have to explain. You know.
Yeah, and just
Um,
the triggering of grief too when you're not braced
yeah,
for it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of as you were talking that went perfectly with what I was thinking about. Obviously, your first one, you were talking about preschool with your first child, that when your second child got into school, did you face similar things? Or by then, did people kind of know you and know what had happened? And so you didn't feel like you had to go through as much of an explanation, or did you have a similar
Exactly.
thing?
No, it was so much easier.
That's
And
great.
they're only a year apart in school because they're 19 months apart.
Right.
So it was, the next year, and everybody knew me, and yeah, it was much, much, much easier.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, something I loved in your submission and the intake form was that you said that your story is one of hope and that you wanted to help people who could be experiencing devastating loss.
Hmm.
So, if anyone listening to this today has been widowed or maybe widowed in the future, what is something that you'd want to tell them or you'd want them to know?
That the basic thing is you were still yourself. It's so important to remember that you are still yourself and not to see yourself in other people's eyes, and to carry on and to peel back to who you basically are, and to remember that, and to carry on and live and learn from your mistakes. There's going to be so many, so many mistakes, but take to heart the fact that you're still you, the basically your core. It is so, I found that just, I didn't learn that for the longest time. And I think that's where all the struggle came from, when I wasn't treated as myself. And I came to believe that maybe I was that way and that this is what happened and I should react this way. But no, I've evolved so much, but I'm still myself. I didn't realize how strong I was. And I take heart that you're strong. You can do this. Lean into your pals, the ones that really know you, and they'll buck you up. They'll help you. They'll encourage you. They'll give you so much strength, and just realize that you'll come through this. And yes, death is crippling, but it's not life ending. There's so much out there. There's so much. Embrace the spouse who died. Talk about him, her. And I think no matter what age, being my age now, I have lost friends. And my dearest friend passed away, and her husband is absolutely naturally devastated. And just sitting there and just listening to him talk and let him talk about her. And I see when I listen and I talk to him, and I see sort of hope developing in his eyes too. I can see it's been a year now, and he lives in Ontario, so I don't see him that much, but we FaceTime. And he very kindly came out with their son, and they asked me to go along and help disperse some of the ashes at her favorite place on Vancouver Island. That was just being able to do that with them was really such an honor, and it helped them. So there is hope. There is really important in the beginning to sit with your feelings and allow the grief and do that. But keep the door open for opportunity, and you will come through this. And you just stay true to yourself. Yeah. All of a sudden it's 30 years. And it's just like, whoa.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the loss of your friend.
Thank
And
you.
that's I think that's such a beautiful message that you said. Like, don't forget that you are strong, you are capable. I think women, especially, we are very strong emotionally, physically,
We are.
mentally, all the things. We can handle so much more than people give us credit for sometimes.
It's so true.
A lot of times, let's be real.
So true.
And yeah, I think that sometimes, like you said, you can get lost in other people's, assumptions or projections, and to sit with it, because if you don't sit with it, you're never going to fully grieve it. And you also aren't going to really know how you feel about it if you just push it down or patch over it. Things like that are deep.
That's what's really interesting is, so I wrote the memoir about working with my mom and her intake disorder. And so now the fiction, and that's what the book is, I'm leaning towards, is a woman who is pushing it down, the grief down.
Interesting.
And yeah.
That'll be really
and
good.
I think that it is so easy to do. And, you don't really want to show a weakness because grief can be seen as a weakness, but no. You need to sit in it. You truly need to do it. You need to realize it's everything, it is. And you will come out the other side. Whereas if you tamp it down and you put it away in your pocket, it's going to haunt you later.
Speaking about your writing, obviously you're written about two very different experiences, but both involving your family or a fictional,
Yes.
part of your family experience. So, what made you decide to write about those two experiences? And has writing about widowhood in a fictional sense helped you process any shame you may have felt back then?
Yeah, it's so the second manuscript, the fictional one, I did 10,000 words, and I was going to do a memoir, and then I went to this writer's workshop where just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where it was all fiction writers. I was the only memoir person, and just to hear the stories and just to hear the whole concept of fiction and how you put fiction together, really, I got really excited, and I thought this opens up way more doors for me to write about than if I just told my story. That's sort of why I'm going into it with fiction. But when I did the memoir of working with mom, I bring my husband in because I met him through the store. His mother was a client. And then I did some marathon running, and I ran a couple of marathons in Vancouver. And I was, after one run, it was a run in West Van called the Catsalana Run, which was quite a famous run at the time. And one of the gals I ran with, we were going out for lunch at the Sylvia Hotel, and she said, "Can I bring my boyfriend?" And of course, bring him. Great. So I arrived late at the lunch and ended up sitting next to this stranger who was my future husband. And we
Crazy.
started, yes, and we started talking. And I'm like, he's telling me all the stuff that I already know, what his dad does, where their cabin is, where he grew up. And I'm like, "What is your last name?" And he goes, "Oh, McKenzie." And I'm like, "I know your mom. She's a customer in our store." So when I was writing that book, all the happy, glorious memories of when we started going out. So I should preface this with the couple broke up.
Yeah.
My pal.
I was assuming. I was
I
assuming they
didn't
didn't work
do it.
out. Yeah.
I didn't break them up. No, several months.
Yeah.
Several months. And then he asked me, they broke up, I don't know, and 6 months later he asked me to go on the sun run with him. So we did the sun run together. That's how it started. But what was really fun was writing that book and realizing like all the happy memories again, that it all came out. So yeah, so he's through, I don't know, the last 2/3 of the book he's there. That was really comforting.
Yeah.
Really, really comforting, living through all that again. So, why did I start writing? I started when my son, the youngest, my son went off to university. So I was on my own, and my mom had a flyer on her coffee table, and it was UBC online courses. So I looked at it, and there was a class called the Memoir Project, and it was writing about your kids. And I thought, well, that's what and I'd always loved writing, but just didn't have time. So anyways, I took this course, and then I ended up writing for an online paper out of Calgary, and I was published across Canada in little local newspapers. And I was writing about my kids. And then I thought, well, I'm not getting paid for this. So I thought, why don't I just do a blog as well? So I started a blog, and I started writing about mom. And folks were like, whoa, we want to know more about her. And meanwhile, she's coming at it, type A, had always done written diaries. And so she is like, "Kel, I have all these diaries. Can you please, you do a book?" But I was not ready to do that. And I was not ready to write a book about her. So anyways, long story short, I ended up writing this. I started in 2016, but got very serious during COVID. And I did that. So I wrote that. And then, so then I brought in my husband through the book. And that really has been an amazing, amazing, amazing thing to bring him back. And my kids love the stories, and they're learning stuff that they didn't know about their dad too.
Yeah, that's such an amazing gift to be able to read about him when they didn't
Yeah.
get to see so many parts of him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, first, what was your husband's name, and what's like one of your favorite memories of him?
Well, that's so cute. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
John McKenzie. And gosh, what would be, there's so many. There's so many. He was very good at not overreacting and wonderful sense of humor. I would say the time we had a black lab, and my parents had a black lab, and we had been looking after their dogs. We had 2 dogs at the time while my parents were away. They came back. My dad picks up their dog and is heading for home. So living in Burnaby, and my parents are living up by UBC, quite a ways. And then my niece was staying with us at the time, and she said, "Granddad took the wrong dog."
I was wondering if that was what it was going to be.
So bless him, John, not the blink of an eye is just hooting with laughter, and bless him, he gathers up the right dog and hurls it in the car and come on, we're doing a road trip. And, it's like 10 o'clock at night and everyone is, the kids are tiny wee but no, it was great. It was delightful. We bundled them all up and go back to my parents and exchange dogs. So yeah, that was fun. And then the time another dog story this was funny. This is funny. This is in the book. This is in the book I wrote. So, you have time for this?
Yeah, of
You're
course.
good? Okay. John said to me, I would really like to ask your parents for your hand in marriage. I think it's traditional. I really want to do it. And I said, okay, the best time would be to go over Saturday morning before we go to work, Mom and I. So you go over to their house and that'd be great. And John is like, because I'd really like you to help choose a ring as well, Cal. I really would like you. So I'm like, oh, that's so nice. And he said, so I can ask your mom if I can take you out for the afternoon from work to choose a ring. So that's great. So it all worked out. So I get a phone call that morning at 6 a.m. Mom calls me and goes, John is here. The dog is missing. Our dog is gone. John has come over. It's so kind of him to come over to help look for the dog. What? So, yes. So they live down by Spanish Banks and their black lab escaped on the beach and ran away. And poor John turns up and he just had no chance to ask any questions. So he's up and down the beach with my dad, walking, looking, calling for this dog. I get in my car and something told me to go to Jericho Beach. So I'm driving along the road by Jericho Beach. I see the dog. He's covered in sand. He's just covered in sand.
He's having a great time.
He's woohoo!
Yeah.
I haul him, get him in the car. He gets in the car. We go back to Mom's and I want to escape. I just want to escape because I don't want to be there when
Yes. Yeah.
So I get there and Mom is like, you can't go. You can't leave. Jeff, my dad, and John are on the beach. You can't leave. So I'm like, oh, I can't stay, Mom. But nonsense. Of course you can stay. So I had to stay. John comes back. Dad comes back. I had to stay. And I kept trying to leave. And I'm doing this. And John is looking at me and he is like, he's laughing. He's just laughing so hard. And I'm going, I really think I should go. And Mom's going, nonsense. You need a proper breakfast. So I had to sit there while John, he looked over at me and he's nodding. He's going, it's okay, it's fine. And he goes, I just want, Frankie, Jeff, I just want you to know that I love your daughter very much. So my mother gets it. Meanwhile, my dad is still looking at the dog.
Yes.
And he's oblivious. And he's going, oh, Osler, I love you, Osler. And John is going, I love Kelly. And I would like to ask for her hand in marriage. And my dad is still, oh, Osler, why did you leave me, you silly boy? And my mom has to turn and look and go, Jeff, he's asking, he wants to marry Kelly. And poor John, I mean, he was hooting with laughter. He's sitting back. He loved the whole thing. And he's just like, this is such a great story. I mean,
Yeah.
this is great. So that was how we started. And we went from there.
I love that. That's a
Yeah.
really funny story. Well, I think we'll kind of close now. And I think you've answered some of, the questions I was thinking about for closing. So I'll just ask in case there's anything else that you can think of or that comes to mind that maybe you didn't say earlier. But, what shame did you carry around this topic and where do you think it came from?
That's great. The shame that I felt was I felt lesser than for quite a while. I felt that I wasn't equal to the people that meant the most to me and to well-known friends were understanding and family were understanding. But like folks who didn't know me very well, I felt they were looking at me as if I was less than them. I was not equal to them. And I carried that around for quite a while. And it would be reinforced every time I met new people. I felt so much lesser and not myself. I felt they weren't seeing the real me. They were seeing somebody else. And that hurt. It hurts. You're immediately seen and not for who you are, and it was so difficult to sort of find my way out of that. But I did, and I came out stronger on the other end.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that because I think for possibly other women in this situation, or maybe in the situation in the future, they may feel guilty, being like, nope, I've got this. I'm strong. I'm still me. You know, I could I could imagine there'd be some sense of guilt around moving forward, with their lives without their husbands there, even though it's what you have to do. And so I think that's really strong and yeah, good point. And then, so this podcast is called Shedding the Shame. So what does shedding the shame mean to you?
Shedding the shame gives you power. It gives you strength. Doesn't diminish what you went through at all. I think you need to acknowledge that, and you need to pat yourself on the back for getting through it and enduring it and not letting it not succumb to it and not regret how you felt at the time. I think that it's really important to acknowledge it and really important to accept that that's how you felt at the time. And don't let it bring you down. Don't let it infuse you with these thoughts that you're not worthy or, you know, don't wallow in it. Don't mire in it on and on. Try to endure it and then rise above it. You're strong. You can do it. And it's hard, but you got to go through the hard stuff and push through and own it. And I
Yeah,
love that you're doing this. I absolutely love that you're doing this. I think it's time. And
thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you.
I think so too. And yeah, the power thing. I mean, speaking up gives you power. It takes the power of that shame away. And I think it's so important and so necessary, especially in the times we're living in now, that women really let go of these things they've been taught to carry quietly and that have held us back. And that's exactly why I wanted to do this. So thank you for being on and just sharing some really difficult things that you went through. I know this is going to help someone who's listening either now or in the future. And I've never heard really anyone talk about being widowed. So I just, yeah, thank you for being willing to do that and being excited to get on and just share everything that you did.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure. It was an honor. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and stay tuned for our next episode of Shedding the Shame. Be well. Thank you for being here and for listening to another powerful conversation on shedding the shame. If something in today's episode resonated with you, I want you to sit with that. Let it land. Let it remind you that whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it quietly. Shame survives in silence. Healing begins when we speak. If this episode moved you, share it with a woman who needs to hear it. Start the conversation. Send the text. Have the brave talk. And if you're ready to stop whispering about your own story, keep coming back. These conversations are just getting started. Until next time, keep telling the truth, keep taking up space, and keep shedding the shame.